squeaky chair this morning. Hi everyone, it's Mike here and welcome back. So today I thought I would discuss a comment that was left on one of my YouTube videos. Now it's not a bad comment. I don't normally read out comments that people have left under art journal pages. Mainly because they usually, thumbs up, like what you did, that kind of stuff, enjoyed it. But this particular comment asked questions, and I thought, although they were fairly basic questions, I thought they raised some valid questions about my thought process on that particular art journal page. So what I thought I would do, I'll put the comment on the screen now so you can read it. I'll put it across the bottom here, and it says, "Nice piece. I wish you would share more about your process of composition. Why the colour choices? Why two different printed papers? And why add that additional black piece? Why leave the bottom right blank? And why the 3 versus the clock?" I'll show you the page in a moment. "Why the placement of the sentiment and why the dots and not the stamps?" Etc, etc. I would really appreciate learning more about your thought process. So like I said, it wasn't a bad comment. It wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't complaining. It was just asking questions. And I don't recognise the username. So this person doesn't comment very often. So I'm just wondering whether or not it's somebody who's come along and hasn't really watched that many of my videos. So probably doesn't understand my style. But I thought it might be a nice little exercise to show you the page that they were referring to, because it was the one I did, I think, last Wednesday. But also explain or go through a little bit of my process in the process, if you know what I mean. Anyway, let me turn over to my other camera and I'll show you the page that they were referring to, and then we'll go through the bits and pieces in the comment. There's a bit of schmutz on there, I'll get rid of that. So this was the art journal page that they were referring to. So let me just bring that comment back in again. So let's just start right at the very beginning. So why the colour choices? Well, the colour choices were deliberate on this one. If you watch the video, I did explain that I wanted to do one with muted colours, but with one single kind of pop of colour, and that was the orange. So that was a personal choice. Now, it could have been orange, it could have been blue, it could have been yellow, it could have been green. Doesn't really make any difference. The only reason that I chose the orange for that was because it was a vibrant colour that I wanted to contrast against the black and the neutrals of the craft paper and the white of the actual art journal page. So second one is, why 2 different printed papers? Well, actually there's more than 2. There's the page from the dictionary, but there's also the page from the like the vintage advert sheet, if you like. That was from, I think it was an old Sears catalogue. It may have been an old Sears catalogue, something like that. Obviously you've got the picture as well, which is the Tim Holtz piece of ephemera, and this is also from one of Tim Holtz's Halloween ephemera sets from many moons ago. So there are more than just those few different paper choices. But again, I chose them for their neutral colours. So the craft cardstock in the background, there and there, I chose because it's neutral. I chose the vintage paper because it had started to yellow and had turned more neutral than the white paper, which it would have been originally, if you get my drift. So those kind of neutrals play into the composition for the colour balance of it. So when you think about it, you've actually got white for the white page, which is kind of off-white anyway. You've got the black, which really does pop, but you've also got the black in the writing as well, and the imagery from the pages. So they kind of tie together. And then you've got the neutral tones in the photograph and in the craft cardstock. So it does kind of all complement together. I'm trying to keep everything within one kind of colour family, which are the neutrals, apart from that one big stark pop of colour, which kind of pokes you in the eye. So that's pretty much why those. And then they go on to say, why add that additional black piece? I'm presuming they mean this piece here. So the reason I added that one piece on the front there was because all the others had started to go into the background. That's in the background, that's in the background, it's got stuff on top of it, that's now covered over with the quote. So this one is the only one that's really in the foreground. We've got, like I said, the black from the writing on the dictionary page and from the adverts, which are almost disappearing into the background because they're behind the layer. So I wanted something which would bring that back to the foreground. So that's why I added on that extra piece. And then the next part of it is, why leave the bottom right blank? So I'm presuming they actually mean this section here. Well, there's that section there. There's also this section here. Now, part of doing a minimalist art journal page means learning how to use and not be afraid of white space. So the white space provides areas around the page where theoretically, or what people say is, for a place for your eyes to rest. It's also one of those reasons why when you do the triangle, the 3-point triangle, the visual triangle, which if you think about it, that's what we've got here. If you look at the orange, we've got orange there, and orange there, which kind of forms that visual triangle which moves the eye around the page. These blank white spaces here, and to some extent down here as well, form places where the eyes can kind of stop and rest before moving on again. So that's why I've left some white space. There also is another reason, but I'll come on to that in a little while. And then you've got, the next question was, why the 3 versus the clock? Now, it was this 3 here. There was, in the Tim Holtz ephemera, there was a round clock. I think it was on one of the stickers. One of the Halloween stickers was the clock face. And I couldn't decide whether to use that or whether to use the 3. Well, it's like deciding what to wear when you get up in the morning. It's kind of what you feel like. It's one of those intuitive things. Now for me, putting the clock on, which would have been the only round item on the page apart from the dots on the orange, I don't think it would have gone as well with the squares, because we've got horizontals and we've got verticals. And putting a circle in there would have kind of just knocked it for 6. It's okay on the orange because that's the only pop that there is. But adding a circle just didn't feel right. And that's what a lot of this is all about. It's what feels right to you on the day. It's like when you get up in the morning, do you wear red, do you wear green, or do you wear black? It depends what you feel like on the day. And it's one of those things that you can't teach. All you can say is, go with your gut instinct. Go with your intuition. If it feels right, it probably is. I hope you understand that. It's not a teachable moment as to decide what shape fits best at any given time. You can't be prescriptive, and there's certainly no hard and fast rule as to what works. It's just how it feels. So, and then the next question is, why the placement of the sentiment? Well, we'll come on to that, because that also brings us back to leaving the white space as well, which I want to go into in a little while. And forgive me if what I do end up doing is teaching grandma how to suck eggs, but it's nice to have a refresher and a bit more of a pointed kind of explanation of some things, which to a lot of us seem natural, but to some people it needs pointing out. Okay, so we'll come on to that in a second. So the next bit is why the dots and not the stamps. So I added dots there. I added dots rather than stamping because the dots I could control into the places that I wanted them to fit, whereas the stamps would have gone over and maybe not be in the same sort of shape. So again, it's a gut instinct thing. I decided not to use the stamp, instead to put my own kind of dots in the background which mirror the circles in the orange, but it's a lot more controlled if you can add and decide where they're going to go and where they're going to fall. With a stamp, as I said, it's fixed, it's a single point of size. At least with the dots you can add more if you want to. So that's why I went with the dots and not the stamps. Okay, so that's the end of those questions, but they do say, again, so why the placement of the sentiment and why leave the bottom right hand side blank. Okay, let me get rid of the art journal page there and bring in a blank journal page. So this is my 12 by 12 art journal page. So what I'm going to go through just quickly is literally the basic rule of thirds. So I'm hoping that the camera can pick up that I've divided this page into a grid of 9 squares, so 3 by 3. I don't particularly want to draw them too dark because I'm probably going to end up getting rid of them in the long run. So the rule of thirds is you place your focal point on one of the what we kind of call the pressure points, which are where the lines intersect. So one there, one there, one there, and one there. If I bring my art journal page back again, if you imagine that I've got that same grid on the screen, look where the pressure points fall. There. And that is where my sentiment is. The other pressure point in the top right hand corner is here. But if you think about where the sentiment sits, it sits on that line across the bottom. This is where the cluster is, here, and that extends out along that line there. So that is my rule of thirds composition. Now once you get more competent or do this more often, you go from knowing what you're doing when you're doing it, which is consciously competent, into unconsciously competent, where you don't even think about doing it, you just do it. Think about like driving a car. Before you start learning how to drive a car, you know you don't know how to do it, so you are unconsciously incompetent at driving a car. Because you don't really know anything about how to drive a car, you don't know what all the controls do, you don't know how the car feels, so you don't know what you don't know. You're unconsciously incompetent. You don't know what you don't know. When you start having lessons and you see all the controls in the car and how the car feels when you're actually moving and how difficult it is to keep the car straight, all that kind of stuff, you suddenly realise that there's a lot to learn. So you go from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, where you now know how much there is to learn. So you know what you don't know. So you've moved on a step. You've gone from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, which is cool, because once you know what you don't know, then you know what you've got to learn. So from that, you then go to, I can drive the car, I know what I'm doing, I can steer it, I know what I've learnt along the journey, so I'm now ready to take my test. So you've now gone a step further and gone to conscious competence. You now know you can do it. You now know what everything means, what everything does in the car. So conscious competence. So you've now gone 3 steps from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence to competent conscious competence. There you go. So that's the third stage. So after a few years of driving, you get in the car and all of a sudden you're driving without thinking. You're just going through the motions. It's just becomes second nature, like riding a bicycle or tying a shoelace or breathing. You do it without thinking. It becomes second nature. So you then move from conscious competence into unconscious competence. You no longer have to think about it. You can just do it without even thinking about it. And after a while of doing art journaling, learning this rule of thirds, that's exactly what happens. You become so used to the areas on the page that you just don't even think about it. You start laying things down on the page in those areas where the composition just makes sense. I hope I've explained that a bit better. Anyway, so let's just do a few examples. So what I've done is I've broken the page up into 9 equal squares. So those are our pressure points there, or power points if you like. Power points, pressure points, they get called different things. So I've got some stamped images here, just as some doodle flowers. These are ones that were done by Kay Halliwell Sutton, the creative genius at Indigo Blue, ages ago. I got these from one of the stamp sets and all I did was stamp it, scanned it, and then I've just blown them up to make them bigger, just for an example. So look at these pressure points. If you put one there and you put one there, you have a perfectly balanced art journal page. Trust me, it works. Or if you do that, look, you've got a perfectly balanced art journal page. Because it is. Or there. It really doesn't matter which way you go. You can build them up. Now, if you look at a lot of compositions on mixed media canvases too, you'll find that people also do this same thing. There'll be a main cluster and then there'll be a smaller cluster, usually at a diagonal line. But what you can do is you can use those 9 grid points. Now, if you use a camera, a digital camera, or you've got a phone, and you can get, when you look through the screen, you can set it sometimes, and particularly with iPhones anyway, you can actually have one of these grids on there. It's a grid, it's like an overlay grid. So that when you're taking photos, you can actually set up your photos using that rule of thirds. So it's one of those things which is a really useful tool and a really useful thing to know. So let's just go back to our little composition. So now if we want to, we can build up. Now look at the line. I'm doing the flowers so they follow the line. Let's move that one there, put one there, and then we'll add another one there. And then we'll take another small one and stick it there. We have a balanced art journal page. You can extend if you want to along that bottom line so it touches that other PowerPoint, and then you could take this one and follow that one across the line as so. Bearing in mind, you could do the whole thing at the top of the page, and I encourage everybody to do this There we go. Another composition. So let's move everything out the way there and let's put our small cluster, I think we'll have that there, that small cluster there, and we'll have the bigger cluster over on the top right hand side. Let's do, keeping that in the middle, so let's do 2 there So the main cluster now is centered on that point there. There we go. And then we can add our smaller pieces coming across, coming down. So no matter where you put it on that kind of grid, you're laughing. You've got so many different ways in which to set out and lay out either an art journal page or a mixed media piece that you'll be spoilt for choice going forward. So the last thing that they said was, of course, so it was, why leave the bottom right blank? Well, we've got all this blank space. Really, you can leave it white. You could leave that with just a little bit of decoration if you want to. But the other question was, why the placement of the sentiment? Well, look at the line. Look at the line. It follows that grid pattern. Yeah? And it doesn't matter whereabouts you actually do it, as long as you follow that kind of rule of thirds grid, you can't go wrong. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, just have two there and have that other one up there. It's a balanced composition. And I've stuck that down now. I could put it there and make it part of that composition and move everything to this side. And I'm just literally throwing things down here, look. Your main PowerPoint is there, that's where your main cluster is. Have your smaller one there, but have your sentiment so it comes off. I mean, you can obviously play about with, you don't have to have it on the line exactly. You could bring it a little bit further down if you want to. You could make it a little closer, take it further away. But it still kind of follows that original grid pattern. So I hope that kind of demystifies that process a little, so that when you go back and look at art journal pages that people have done, see if you can spot where they've lined up their art journal pages with. They may have done it all just down one side and then just come across, you know, to one of those lines. See if you can spot it, and then every time you look at something now, you'll be going, where is it? Where's it lined up with? And again, have a look on your phone, have a look on your camera, see whether or not you've got those grid lines. That will also help when you're taking photos. Now, if I just scoot down here, look, now I'm now framed in that bottom left-hand PowerPoint on the camera. So there you go. Don't forget, if you're inspired by anything that I do or anything I've done, to share it in the Facebook group. So Mike's Creative Collective. So that's just appeared on the screen now is in that opposite direct point in that rule of thirds. That's all from me for now. Like I said, if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, because it really does help get the channel out there to other people. Don't forget, you can share it with your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking the button at the end of the video. So that must be one of the only pages that I've ever done where I've actually not done one. That's all from me for now. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye for now. I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of my angels, because without you, these videos would not be possible. And don't forget, you can access your exclusive angel-only content over on my website. There's a link in the description area below. Thank you.